Hi guys, welcome back. Steeljan here, and today we're going to talk about the Darwin from Evolv. And I want to say a big thank you to Brandon from Evolv for giving me this Darwin to use on this review video. So what makes the Darwin different is that it actually lets you set the watts, and then it maintains the watts no matter what you put on the top of it. Now, watts in vaping is our heat. It's much the same way as if you're talking about watts in a light bulb. You've got a 15-watt light bulb. It's not as bright as a 60-watt light bulb. If you were to touch them, you'd find that the 15-watt light bulb was cooler than the 60-watt light bulb. And it's the same thing. If we could just dial in our watts, like dimming and brightening the lights in the room by a light dimmer switch, then we'd be so much the better off. But let me give you an example of how it might be if I were using another variable voltage device. This one is variable voltage, it's a lava tube, and I've got it set right now to 4.9 volts. Oh look, E-Smoker sent me this low-res atomizer to try. Well, I want the same heat, but I want to use this low-res atomizer. I know this cartomizer is 3 ohms. What do I dial this into so that this gives me the same heat? Well, I'd have to do this. Now I know that what I'm vaping is actually 7.8 watts. So now what do I need to set it to? Oh, let's do this. Okay, so now I know I'll have to dial the lava tube into 3.4 volts to get the same watts, the same 7.8 watts as I did on with the 3 ohm cartomizer. Oh, but before I do that, I better check and make sure I'm not going to exceed the amps, because I can't exceed 2.5 amps. So I better do that equation too. Okay, great. So now I know that it's 2.3 amps. So now I know to get my 7.8 watts, I'm going for my low-res atomizer, I'm going to dial the lava tube into 3.4 volts, and it's not going to exceed the lava tube's amperage. Or I could just get a Darwin. You see, the thing is, if I put the Darwin at 7.8 watts, then it doesn't matter what I screw on here, it will maintain 7.8 watts of heat for me. But there's a whole lot of other things that are great about the Darwin too, aside from the fact that it just maintains constant wattage. That is, it's got 7 layers of protection. It's got the 2 batteries in here. They're 3.7 volt lithium polymer battery packs that are 900 milliamp hours each in parallel. They're 10C rated for 10C. I think they can do 13 instantaneous amps each one, so double that. You've got more than enough battery power, so you don't have to go around trying to figure out if you've got enough amps. You're always going to have enough amps with the Darwin. It's got short circuit protection, 2 layers, over voltage protection on the battery, under voltage protection on the battery. It's got the charger built in, so you're never handling naked batteries. You know how I'm harping about handling naked lithium batteries. It can also be a sit, charge, and vape. You can plug this into the charger and you can sit there and continue to vape it. The circuit board on here has 2 levels of self-check, and so every 5 seconds you'll see the screen blink because it's checking its electronics. You put the arm up for on, you put the arm down for off, and there you have it. It's very, very heavy. This is very solid metal. Very solid metal, and it's pretty darn heavy. And when I first got it, I wasn't quite comfortable holding it, but I got used to it over a few days, and for the features that it has, oh boy. For vent holes in the Darwin, you've got the venting in the USB connector hole. You've got space around this adjusting knob here where you adjust your watts up and down. It's got a little center point in there where it stops, so you can know I'm going to go up a little bit or down a little bit for my heat. The switch here is not exactly where the switch is. That's actually a piece of, looks like brass. And so if I had my thumb on this, let's say 7 levels of protection, something happened and they all went wrong and the battery exploded. Well, lithium polymer batteries, lithium ion in general, is going to destruct in 2 stages, and the first stages is going to be a little poof of, not a little, but it's going to be a poof of outgassing. And this switch that is metal, or the place where I push, that is metal, is going to get cherry hot. Probably the whole case will, but especially this, I think, would get really hot. So that I'd probably drop it or throw it at that point. But look at this. You know how most PVs have the atomizer coming, the connector coming straight up out of it? So when you see accidents, you see that people have gotten their faces blown off because it blows it straight into their face. Not on the Darwin. This comes out to the side. Now I can tell you, because I opened this, that that's not coming off. It's got a huge bulb of this brass metal in here, and so it would be really hard for this to blow off. But let's say it did. It's going that away. It's going that away. It's going that away. It's not going this away. So I will tell you that when I first got it, I kind of thought of it was so cool, but it was kind of like when you go to the shoe store and you put your foot in that measurement device and the guy slides the little things around on your foot, so it's absolutely going to be your perfect shoe size. But instead of getting a pair of shoes, they just strap 2 of those on you and you clomp out of the shoe store, clomp, clomp. But no, over a few days I got used to it. And so, yeah, great. So let's take a look. I'm going to show you how, when we roll the Darwin up through its numbers on one cartomizer, this one, what it does. This is the Darwin with the Stardust or EcoVision cartomizer, clearomizer, whatever we're calling it. Nice good 3 ohm cartomizer. Let's roll it all the way up to its 8.4 midpoint. And up to the max of 12.7. That's great. But now let's look at dual coil cartomizers, especially low resistance dual coil cartomizers. Now this is a bit of a tricky situation. I have to go into my little spiel on this. Now when we first got low resistance atomizers, when we first got those, it has 1 coil inside of it, and it was like 1.5 ohms. Actually, I think back in the day, the first low resistance was 2 ohms. But let's say 1.5 ohms. And what would happen is if you put too much current through it, it would just pop this single piece of wire. Poof, and it acted as a fuse, which was actually good, because this meant that your weakest link was going to be something that was like a fuse. But now we have dual coil low res cartomizers. And what happens in a low res dual coil cartomizer is you've got 2 coils and they're both 3 ohm in parallel. So in parallel they come out to 1.5 ohms. The problem with this is that these aren't going to pop. This is no longer your weakest link. Destroying your battery or your device is your weakest link now, because you can put all the amps you want through these 3 ohm coils and they're not likely to break. But there's more to it than this. In our last example, we were going with a low resistance atomizer, 1 coil, and it was 1.5 ohms, and we were going to put 2.3 amps through it, and we were going to come out to 7.8 watts, right? But now with this dual coil cartomizer, we're still going to put 2.3 amps through it, but now only 1.3 amps is going to go here, and 1.3 amps is going to go here. So in effect, you're only heating each of these 3 ohm coils up, if you stay with the same wattage, to half the heat. So you're probably going to want to crank it up. And this is where a lot of guys get into the I want 11 watts and 12 watts and things like that, is because they're actually trying to heat 2 coils at one time, and trying to get the heat up of the 2 coils at one time to at least be the same as vaping 1 3 ohm coil at one time. Does that make sense? So I'm not a big fan of dual coil cartomizers for this reason. You can get a great vape with a single coil cartomizer if you just adjust your heat and use the right e-liquid. And that comes from your own trial and error. I do like these visions though. Let's see what happens when we step up through a dual coil cartomizer. Low resistance dual coil cartomizer, 4.2 watts. This is the midpoint, the 8.4 watt midpoint setting on the dial wheel. This is the max, 12.7. So if you're paying attention during the dual coil cartomizer, you saw something interesting, I'll bet. The Darwin can only adjust down to 3.3 volts. That's as far down as it can adjust to. It does that so you can get the wattage that you're dialing in as safely as possible. 1.5 ohms is pretty low ohms. So it can only dial down to 3.3 volts, and so it stayed at 2.7 amps for a really long time. It stayed there on the dial from 4.2 watts up to 9.99 watts. So what this tells you is that at 1.5 ohms, you're not going to go below 9.99 watts because it just can't dial the voltage down any lower. So I've played with the Darwin now for, I guess, almost a month, and I just love this thing. It really makes me feel safe. And you know, I'm always the one harping about safety, but I really feel safe with this device. It's the only thing I'd put a low-res dual coil cartomizer on, that's for sure. Although I'm loving these visions so much, I think I'll just stick with these for a while. And I honestly think the Darwin is worth the money. One thing I wanted to add on this is, you know, the Darwin is actually a USA product. It really is. There's a lot of people out there, a lot of sellers out there who, not a lot, but there are a few that say that they have USA made products. When they don't, they get it all from China and they put it in a box, and their act of putting it in a box they think makes them be able to say it's made in the USA. This is actually made in the USA. The heavy metal is, it's double anodized aluminum, is actually machined by the Evolv team right there. Then they do get some piece parts from overseas, but the brass arm and all this is actually made in the United States. They design this in the United States, then they make it in the United States. So, and the thing is, Brandon was saying that it took them 6 months and almost $100,000 to design this and come out with it. And so, yes, I know it's pricey. It's like $245. But do I think it's worth it? Absolutely. Not just for I can dial in whatever watts I want, but because I feel safety-wise, it's got it all going on, hands down, for safety. And I like vaping, but I like vaping safe. Anyway, guys, that's all from me. This is steeljan out. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.
steeljan.